Drivers that make ridiculous arguments with the police and film them for social media credit are likely to cost you, the law-abiding motorist, money. Usually through your insurance, because your insurance company is going to charge you money to cover their levy that they pay into the Motor Insurance Bureau if those drivers are not insured, which on many occasions they're not insured, as it sounds like is the case from the clip that I'm about to show you. So I'm going to react to this video because I've been sent it a number of times. But first of all, if you are new to me, please do subscribe. I'm a barrister of England and Wales. I enjoy helping you to understand law and bringing you interesting news, tidbits, and generally demystifying the law. So let's go to this video here, because this, I have to admit, somewhat irritates me, because the police have a difficult job as it is. Now, the police are not without their own criticism, granted, but when they are trying to do their job properly and people are making it difficult for them, invariably it's a waste of everybody's time. So not only are you paying for the police directly or indirectly through your taxes and so on, but you're also paying for the damage that these drivers cause through your insurance premiums, as I said. So let's take a look at this interaction and see what this driver has to say to this police officer.
Hi, mate. Engine off for us, mate.
Pausing first of all, this driver's obviously been stopped by the police, as they're allowed to do, which I'll come on to explain in a minute. There's no requirement to turn the engine off. It's just a sensible request by the officer, not least of which so they can hear each other, but it's just a sensible request. Let's continue.
So I'll be recording you as well, fella.
It's all right, mate.
So the officer, I presume, is prompted to confirm that he's recording because the drivers seem to be recording with his phone or whatever this is. And of course, the Data Protection Act requires that you're informed if you're being recorded by a person in authority or an organisation and that sort of thing. Let's carry on.
Right, your car?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your name?
What's up? What for?
Because I need to speak to you about the speed at which you were travelling down that road, mate.
Pausing. Two things there. First of all, the driver is asked for his name because the legislation provides for this, for the officer to do so. And secondly, because the officer says that he's wants to speak to him about the speed that he was driving at down the road. We'll come back to both of those in a minute.
What speed was that?
Well, I don't know, but it was well in excess of the speed limit.
It was 30.
Well,
Pausing. The driver says it was 30, and the officer says it was well in excess of the speed limit. So that is obviously the officer's opinion. Presumably, most of these police cars have dash cam recordings. So just so that you know, there is a requirement for one police officer's opinion to be backed up by evidence unless it's on a motorway, because the legislation for motorways doesn't provide that someone isn't convicted on a single witness, whereas ordinarily it is not the case that you'll be convicted on a single witness, i.e. the opinion of a single officer. But if it's the opinion formed by two officers, that is sufficient. Usually it's one officer's opinion plus some evidence, unless it's a motorway. So let's listen on.
It wasn't, because had you been travelling at 30, out of all the other cars that have passed tonight that are legitimately travelling at the speed limit, yours is the only one that's caused my attention due to the speed in which it was travelling at.
Pause. That is precisely what the court would look for in the officer's opinion. So the officer's justified his opinion there. Out of all of the other vehicles that he's seen travelling on that road, this is the only one that's caught his attention because of the speed that it was travelling at. So the officer's given his opinion, he's justified it, and then presumably there'll be some dashcam footage to back that up. But this gets even more interesting the more we watch of this. I've only watched the first 2 minutes before I decided to do a full reaction on as much of this as I can stomach. So let's listen on.
Okay. So I need to confirm who you are. So I need your details, because you're driving a motor vehicle on a road, which gives me a power to stop you, to check you are who you say you are, and you are insured and registered to drive this vehicle.
All of which is correct, by the way, which, as I said, I'll come back to, but let's hear the driver's response first.
Okay.
Can I ask what crime I've committed, please?
Pausing. The crime, the offence that will be committed is if the driver refuses to provide these details. Quite simply, let's move straight away to the legislation. 163 of the Road Traffic Act 1988 quite clearly provides that police have the power to stop vehicles. A person driving a motor vehicle on the road must stop the vehicle on the road if required to do so by a constable in uniform. And if a person fails to stop, they're guilty of an offence. And it goes on in subsequent sections to provide the name, date of birth in certain cases, and insurance, and so on. And failure to do so is also an offence. That's the crime. That's the offence. Let's listen on.
You don't need to have committed a crime.
Are you going to introduce yourself first, or...?
Yeah, I'm Sergeant Martin Toombs, 2515 from Nottinghamshire Police's Tactical Support Group.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfectly open and transparent. Now, the officer clarified that he didn't need to have committed a crime to have been pulled over. That's also true. A lot of people seem to have this idea that you have to have committed some kind of offence to be pulled over by the police, and that's obviously not true. As I said and quoted from the Road Traffic Act here, power of police to stop a vehicle. If you are driving a motor vehicle on a road, you must stop on being required to do so by a constable in uniform. And if you don't, you're guilty of an offence. Obviously, this driver did stop. But the Act goes on to require the name and address and even date of birth in certain instances and so on, providing insurance details. Providing the documents, there is a defence available if you do so within 7 days. That's colloquially known as producer. But let's listen on. See what else this driver has to say.
You don't have to have committed a crime. You are driving a motor vehicle on a road.
So am I under arrest?
No.
Am I being detained?
No.
So I'm free to leave?
No, you're not free to leave at the moment.
You're
not under arrest, okay? But you're not going anywhere at the moment until you provide your details, because at the moment I need to clarify who you are. The Road Traffic Act gives me a power to stop any motor vehicle on the road, to stop and make sure that it's insured.
What if I told you that I'm not?
Everything the officer said so far is correct, but listen to what the driver says next. Let's scoot back because I realised that I paused and you weren't quite hear the start of what the driver said. Let's listen to what the driver says in response to this.
That it's insured.
What if I told you that I'm not insured?
Then I'd deal with you.
I'm not. What if I was not involved in that corporation?
What do you mean not involved in that corporation?
To have a driving licence or to be insured is to be employed. This is my private conveyance. I'm travelling at free will.
And it was at this point that I stopped watching the video and decided to do a reaction to this video. So this is the only bit that I've watched before flipping on the camera and deciding to do a video on this. This is a common argument going around which says something along the lines of, if you register your vehicle and if you pay for insurance, then you're somehow employed by the corporation. This is all nonsense, because if you drive a motor vehicle on a road or other public place, you're required to have a license, you're required to have an MOT, you're required to have insurance. And you can tell the look on this poor officer's face here that's having to deal with this, that this may have been the first time that he's come across this, or at least he wasn't expecting it at the time. But let's listen on to see what else this driver has to say.
What on earth are you going on about? The Road Traffic Act in England.
Have I committed a crime?
The Road Traffic Act states
that to drive
a motor vehicle on a road.
2515. What crime have I committed, please?
I haven't said you've committed a crime.
So what are you stopping for?
Because you have been stopped because you are driving a motor vehicle
have you got proof?
On a road. Yeah. You're on my dash cam driving this vehicle.
Right. Get the speed limit up. I was on 30 miles an hour.
Right.
Right, so at this point, the driver's going back to, I was driving at 30 miles an hour. It doesn't matter who's driving at 30 miles an hour or not. The officer has the power under the legislation to stop the vehicle, to require the driver's name, details, insurance, everything else. The driver has to stop the vehicle. The driver has to provide those details. Otherwise, the driver is committing a separate offence, irrespective of whether he was speeding or not, which will be corroborated by whatever dashcam footage the officer recorded.
Break the law for no reason.
The reason I've had cause to stop and speak to you is because, in my opinion, you are travelling in excess of the speed limit, okay? The fact that
And that point there is the key one. That's the officer's opinion. It'll be corroborated by any evidence on his dash cam, which he's already mentioned. And there is another officer around the other side of the vehicle, which may or may not have been in the car. I don't know yet because I haven't watched this, but let's carry on.
I've had, the fact that I've
Can I
stopped
have
it
your
is
details,
irrelevant.
please? Because you're walking around my car unidentified. I don't know who you
Yeah,
are.
it does. It does.
Of course it does.
You're dealing with me, and I've identified
What's your number, mate?
myself.
Hey,
What's your number?
fine, 3825.
PC who?
Basper.
Alright. And you're all under oath today, aren't you?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Which oath?
Hey?
Which oath?
We swear an oath to the Queen.
Swear an
Okay.
Yeah, which oath?
The oath.
Interesting point. Police officers do swear an oath. Even judges swear an oath. Barristers don't. Commonly misunderstood, as is common law. Watch the comment section go crazy here. But it's a common misunderstanding. Barristers don't swear an oath. Barristers are independent of everybody else in what we do. So let's listen on.
Which oath are you under today?
The oath that we swore
Which
out.
oath are you under
it's
today?
the oath that we swore to the Queen. And I'm not.
And
I know,
you're all under the same oath,
No,
yeah?
I can't repeat it to you because I read it out on a piece of paper.
So you can't remember it?
I can't repeat the,
So you're
the
not under
exact
oath?
wording of the oath. No, I read it out.
Am
on a
I
piece of
being...
So this driver's saying he's not under oath because he can't recite it word for word verbatim from memory when this is a sergeant and he would have taken this, I don't know how many years ago, usually 10 to 20 years ago when he became an officer and he was sworn in and signed off. And this driver's saying that he's not under an oath because he can't recite it verbatim. Unbelievable. Unbelievable waste of taxpayers' time and money.
detained?
21 years
Am
ago.
I being detained?
There we go. 21 years ago, he says.
Yes, until you give me your name and address.
I've not committed a crime.
You don't have to. You are committing an offence under the Road Traffic Act.
I've not committed a crime.
You are committing
I'm not
an
doing it,
offence
mate.
under the Road Traffic Act by not providing your name and details.
100% correct. Now, when this video was first sent to me, I was asked the question, who's right, who's wrong, and is this driver committing an offence and so on? Is the officer right to stop him and question him? Can the officer stop him and question him? These are the sorts of questions that have come to me when people have sent me this video. Then absolutely, yes, the officer can stop the driver of any vehicle that's on a road or other public place under Section 163 of the Road Traffic Act. And yes, the officer can require the name and details of this driver. And yes, it is an offence not to provide those details. Do you know what would happen if the police stopped me on a road in my vehicle? I've usually got my driving license with me, if not in my wallet, stored in my phone somewhere on one of my secure drives. So I would provide it there and then I'd find a copy of it. And if the officer wasn't happy with it, she would be, by the way, because I'd be cooperative and I wouldn't be argumentative like this driver is being. I would be perfectly cooperative. Why? Because I don't break the speed limit, much to the disheartening of disagreements with erstwhile friends of mine that don't believe me that I don't break the speed limits. Some of you might call me boring, but I don't break the speed limits. I set it at the speed limit and I don't go beyond it, and I slow down if there's something coming up ahead. But that's what would happen, and I'd be on my way. We're 3 minutes, 14 seconds into this interaction. I'd have been gone in 30 seconds. Let alone 60 seconds as the film says. Let's carry on with this video.
So at
What
the
cri-
moment,
what crime?
At the moment, I
There's
cannot
no victim,
confirm.
mate. There's
at
no
the moment,
victim.
This is another common misconception, that there needs to be a victim for a crime. This is also not true. If you're breaking one of the regulations or any part of legislation, you're committing an offence. It doesn't need to be a victim as such, as is the common misconception.
can't confirm that
Well,
you
there's
are
no proof.
insured to drive this
Go
vehicle.
check it then, mate.
I need to know who you are to see if you're the person that's
Damage
named
my
on the
private
insurance.
conveyance, please.
Now, this bit bears a bit of explanation because, now this is on the fly because I haven't watched this video before. Driver is suggesting go and check the details, but the officer has stopped the vehicle to ascertain who's driving because of the manner in which it was being driven. And the officer is requiring the details of the driver. Now, in my view, the officer's doing the right thing by not just walking away, because the driver will just drive off if the driver is anyone of interest. Now, it is true that the officer could check the details with a DVLA. That takes time. If this vehicle, which it sounds like it has driven past the police vehicle at speed, the police officer has just decided to pull this vehicle over. And it appears to me that there's more than one police vehicle, as I saw another one drive past earlier. So the officer's doing the right thing, perfectly politely, perfectly respectfully, and with a huge amount of patience in this situation, if I say so. but let's continue watching this interaction.
Say again?
Don't damage my private
I didn't
conveyance.
damage your private conveyance.
Yes, you did. You're on camera. It made a sound. Don't touch the glass. Don't
where's
touch
the
me
damage?
fucking... Can you get off your...
Right.
Can you get off?
Don't swear at me.
Can you get off my vehicle?
Right, so now the driver started swearing. He's accusing the officer of damaging the vehicle when he's just accidentally touched the window with his pen. That is not in any way any kind of damage, so that's a silly argument at best. But he's now started swearing at the officer. Now I'd be beginning cause for concern
Please.
Don't swear
that this is going to escalate.
at me.
Thank you. Well,
You just swore
You've
at me.
blocked me in and
Yes,
you've
I
just
have.
told me... Let me speak. You've just told me I've not committed a crime. There's no proof I was doing 30 miles an hour.
That's not quite true. The driver's saying, you've just told me that I haven't committed a crime. The officer actually confirmed that it's an offence not to provide his details. I feel like we're going to go around in circles here, but let's give it some time.
Or more. I was doing 30 on the dot.
Right, but you're
I
losing.
seen you turn around.
You're losing track.
Are
of
you
the
bored?
point.
You must
You're
be bored,
losing
aren't you?
track
The
of
lot of you.
point. The
What's
law
your number,
states-
Doc?
The law states.
3267.
The law states that I have a power
I
to
don't
stop
stand under your
any-
law, mate.
that any
I
motor
don't stand
vehicle.
under your law.
And now we go with this common law nonsense again. I don't stand under your law. Well, you're in this country. You have to abide by these laws. The officer has the power to stop your vehicle and has the power to require your details. And it's an offence not to do so. Whether you agree with it, consent to it, stand under it, whatever phrase you want to coin is irrelevant. The laws apply to you if you're in this country. Let's listen on.
Right.
I do not understand.
Just to pause for comment here, lots of people are complaining that the police are underfunded, under-resourced, the police can't attend jobs, they can't attend to theft, to burglaries, all sorts of stuff. This is one of the reasons why. Police time, a sergeant no less, being taken up by ridiculous arguments like this because he could have just provided his details at the outset, which he's required to do, and it's an offence not to do so, and instead is wasting all of this time, and ultimately it's taxpayers' funds that are paying for it. So just to conclude that little episode, it appears that evidence of the registration and the driving license for this vehicle and this driver here was emailed to this laptop for the police to see. So despite all the bravado of this private conveyance nonsense of this vehicle not being registered, and he doesn't stand under the law and he doesn't contract with the corporation and all of that sort of stuff, he has in fact got a driving license and insurance, and he has registered the vehicle, he has registered himself, he is on the system. So whether he would like to think that he contracts with the corporation, stands under the law and all that sort of stuff, in the end he did comply. And all he did here was waste 15 minutes short 12 seconds of his life by arguing with the police over a totally nothing argument, it would seem. If he really believed these arguments, then he wouldn't have registered the vehicle, he wouldn't have a license, he wouldn't have insurance. But ultimately, he does. And all he's done is waste the police time. And so however many times this happens across the country, every single day, is that much time police wasted from responding to someone who's being attacked. Knife point or burglaries. So the next time that your house is burgled or your car stolen or someone's being attacked and you'd like to phone the police and respond to it, they are responding to people like this. And just to answer the question as to why the police officer spent so much time with this guy in the first place is because, well, the officer said it all along. He can't ascertain who he is. Now, if somebody such as this driver who is so argumentative refuses to comply and refuses to tell the officer who he is so aggressively and starts swearing at the officer, there's the likelihood that this driver's been involved in some kind of crime and therefore doesn't want to confirm his name and who he is. because they would have also done a search as to whether there's any outstanding warrants for arrest or whether he's known or wanted for any in connection with any other offences. And that is the reason that the officers are persistent. Because if this driver doesn't want to tell the officer who they are, because statistically, if a driver is driving at speed, there's usually something else like no insurance, no license, disqualified from driving, car's got no MOT, he's wanted for other offences, whatever that's in relation to. So the officers are persistent in finding out who they are. Because if they've got somebody that is likely to be connected to any one of those things, it is in your interest as the viewer that these officers get these people arrested and seen to for whatever offence it is that they might have committed. As it turns out, it appears that this driver wasn't wanted for any other offence. He was registered on the system despite his protestations that he doesn't stand under the law and contract with the corporation, as he puts it. So he's just wasted 15 minutes of police time. So those are my views on this sort of video. Many people have asked for it. I'm all prepared to defend somebody if I think the police have been unreasonable in their allegations and they are, in any way acting beyond their power. But in this case, the officer was justified and the driver was just wasting his time. So speaking of time, I thank you for your time for watching this video. Please do like it and subscribe. And as many of you have suggested, bad drivers is one example for this channel that you'd like to see more of. This, in my view, was a bad driver. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.